serves me is that I find it, or many of the people that I've talked to when going door to door, have heard your comment concerning the 3% and the fact that you're voting for that. As a representative, you should really make it clear to vote for something that is very close in a race such as this, or if you look at the polls, it says that it's neck and neck as to how it's going to turn out. I think it's, and many voters have told me this is a question from voters, is it's ill to be voting for something that you know is going to take millions of dollars away from the 6 communities that are in our area. So that's really something that's bothering to the voters as well as bothering to me. It's not fiscally responsible.
Your question is?
How can you vote against or for the 3 when really the right way is to be going to the 5?
Sure, thank you, Stan. Well, I support rolling back the sales tax to 5%. So how do we get there? Do we count on this legislature, this one-party monopoly legislature, to do the right thing and roll back the sales tax? After all, it's the legislature that actually increased the sales tax along with 7 other taxes this year. Or do we let the citizens step up and say, you know what you did is a mulligan. Do it over. It's a do-over. And roll it back. Now, the only question that's presented is to 3%. I oppose that. I don't like the idea of 3%. It's too much of a break. But I do support going to 5%. So if people vote yes on 3, if I am elected, I will move to either reinstate it to 5% or to explore the possibility of a property tax deduction for sales tax, which essentially solves the border issues for our border communities, our border businesses. In terms of all of the costs and consequences, the Democrats never see the spending side of the ledger. They only see the revenue side. I think that we can squeeze out at least $1 billion of waste, and I proposed it on my website, danwinslow.com.
Thank you. What's your response?
You might say the response that I've got back from the voters is the fact that the 3% is a binding issue, and that's politics as normal to say, okay, if the voters vote for 3%, now you're going to take it upon yourself to say, well, I don't like that vote, and I'm going to roll it back to 5, which legislators have been doing right along. And that's where most of the voters said, be sure on what you want to tell us, and tell us what you really believe, not come out and say, I'm making it a point to 3%. That's all I've heard.
Mr. Winslow, you have a question for Mr. Nacewicz?
Sure. Stanley, you've proposed a 50% increase as a local option to the motor vehicle excise tax, which I've disagreed with. But you've also proposed to shift any future increases of property tax onto working families and younger people, people under the age of 65, without regard to income qualifications. Under your proposal, a multimillionaire who's over 65 years old could get a tax break, while a young working family could not. I want to ask you, how do you justify that kind of a break for somebody without regard to income if they are a multimillionaire?
So what you would like me to talk about is the senior exemption.
I'd like you to answer the question. You don't have any income requirements.
There is no income. All right, the senior exemption, it was what you're basically talking about is the senior exemption. The senior exemption is based on the fact that there's a thing called the equalization or the recap or within Proposition 2.5. My proposal that sits in there is very similar to what's in 4 other states in the U.S. What will happen is that when a senior reaches 65 years old and has lived in the community for 15 years, that's the key thing, that they will be exempt. Income should not play a part. They're living within their means, they're living within a home of a standard, what is in their means. The taxes will be frozen at that point in time. If you put it into the basis of what does it do, it does not shift the taxes over to anybody. What it does do is it turns down the increase in the recap. The recap, the levy capacity, will not increase based on those values, so it is not shifting any burden. It's basically reducing the burden on every single citizen in that community.
Your response to?
Yeah, Stan Nacewicz has proposed a tax break for Thurston Howell III. If somebody is 65 or older and has lived in their house for 15 years, he'd give them a tax break regardless of their income. I don't think that's right, because what that does is it shifts instead any future tax increases onto younger people, people under 65, and to working families. That's wrong. We're all in this together. We all have an obligation to pay the costs of a civilized society, and we all have an obligation, we all have a stake in making sure that our government spends wisely and well. So I disagree with this running people against each other and giving special breaks or exemptions for some people and not others. We're a community, we've got to work together.
Thank you. The legislature